Hello, and welcome to the second part of our Skinwalker series. If you have not listened to part 1, please take a moment to go and listen. Now that everyone is caught up, let's get into it. The Shermans had been terrorized for years by unknown beings and had decided to sell. Millionaire philanthropist Robert Bigelow, also the chairperson and founder of the National Institute for Discovery Science or NIDS, had for years been communicating with the Shermans in an effort to understand the events unfolding at the Sherman Ranch. When the property was put up for sale, he quickly stepped in and purchased it. A team of researchers, surveillance equipment, and scientific instruments were moved in making the old Sherman Ranch a seat for fringe science discovery. The ranch was unofficially renamed Skinwalker Ranch, in respect to the Native Americans that had been witnessing and studying these creatures for centuries. Creatures that came by all descriptions, but that they called skinwalkers. In the Navajo language, Yinaldlushii translates to, by means of it, it goes on all fours. While perhaps the most common variety seen in horror fiction by non-Navajo people, the Yinaldlushii is one of several varieties of skinwalkers in Navajo culture. Specifically, they are a type of anti-Inii. The legend of the skinwalkers is not well understood outside of Navajo culture, mostly due to reluctance to discuss the subject with outsiders. Traditional Navajo people are reluctant to reveal skinwalker lore to non-Navajos, or to discuss it at all among those they do not trust. 3. What happens when Rowling pulls this in, is we as Native people are now opened up to a barrage of questions about these beliefs and traditions, but these are not things that need or should be discussed by outsiders at all. I'm sorry if that seems unfair, but that's how our cultures survive. Adrian Keene. 3. Navajo witches, including skinwalkers, represent the antithesis of Navajo cultural values. While community healers and cultural workers are known as medicine men and women, or by other positive, nurturing terms in the local, indigenous language, witches are seen as evil, performing twisted ceremonies and manipulating magic in a perversion of the good works medicine people traditionally perform. In order to practice their good works, traditional healers learn about both good and evil magic. Most can handle the responsibility, but some people can become corrupt and choose to become witches. It is said that in order to become a skinwalker, the magician must first kill a close relative such as a brother, sister, father, or mother. Animals associated with witchcraft usually include tricksters such as the coyote. However, it may include other creatures, usually those associated with death or bad omens. They might also possess living animals or people and walk around in their bodies. 5, 6, 7 Skinwalkers may be male or female. 4. Skinwalker stories told among Navajo children may be complete life and death struggles that end in either Skinwalker or Navajo killing the other, or partial encounter stories that end in a stalemate. 4 Encounter stories may be composed as Navajo victory. Skinwalker stories typically take the form of partial encounter stories on the road, where the protagonist is temporarily vulnerable, but then escapes from the skinwalker in a way not traditionally seen in Navajo stories, European folk stories, and substitute skinwalkers for generic killers like the Hook. The National Institute for Discovery, although entirely focused on the study of fringe science, is far from unscientific. Many reputable PhDs and even ex-military or NASA personnel are amongst the organization's researchers and consultants. Unbelievable. There is a very specific but unassuming spot on Skinwalker Ranch where some uniquely terrifying things have happened. In this spot, a researcher was threatened by a creature that he stated blended with the scenery, rendering it almost invisible, not unlike the alien from the Predator movies. Curiously, the creature neither hid nor attacked the researcher, it just stood there roaring and threatening him. In that exact same spot, an entire team of researchers witnessed a glowing door or portal open in the empty space before them. A large humanoid creature crawled out from the portal, spotted the researchers, and quickly vanished back through the portal before it closed. In another incident on that spot, a PhD physicist was suddenly held motionless by an invisible force. In his accounts of the episode, he reported that a malicious and powerful entity or entities had literally invaded his mind and communicated with him a single message, that he and others of his species were not welcome. While this spot on Skinwalker Ranch may be the epicenter of these events, they are not at all confined to the ranch itself. Junior Hicks, a retired schoolteacher from the area, has been attempting to catalog the strange events from the surrounding farms. He's cataloged over 400 incidents of UFOs, strange cigar-shaped crafts hovering at low altitude, and zigzagging balls of light. Hicks estimates that at least 50,000 residents of the region have witnessed one phenomenon or another. Many of these witnesses are the law enforcement personnel overseeing the community. The UFO activity really started getting intense in the early 50s, Hicks says. There were cases where the whole school and all the teachers saw these things hovering over the town in broad daylight. In the 60s and 70s, we probably had more UFO sightings than any place in the world. Perhaps the strangest phenomenon from Skinwalker Ranch and the surrounding farms are the strange animals that are often seen wandering as though lost. Descriptions of these creatures include a wolf-like creature that walks upright, a large impossibly hairy man or bear that also walks upright, and a flying creature the size of a football that would be a butterfly except that its body and wings are entirely reptilian. It's easy to argue that there should be hundreds of photographs of these thousands of incidents, and to some degree there are, but the majority of these sightings were taking place in the 50s to 70s, back then having a camera in your phone, or having a mobile phone at all was science fiction. Leading into the 1980s, the phenomenon grew rarer to the point that in 2004 Robert Bigelow closed down the National Institute for Discovery Science, stating a lack of fringe occurrences to study. During the time of the Skinwalker Ranch studies, the NIDS had a prevailing theory which stated that all of the occurrences were the act of a single, precognitive intelligence. The leading researcher at the time explained, "It isn't as simple as saying that ETs or flying saucers are doing it. It's some kind of consciousness, but it's always something new and different, something non-repeatable. It's reactive to people and equipment, and we set up the ranch to be a proving ground for the scientific method, but science doesn't seem amenable to the solution of these kinds of problems." This was unfortunately the leading and best theory, and as the explanation stated, the phenomenon are far too unique from the previous or following phenomenon to be routinely evaluated. The site known as Skinwalker Ranch has since been sold to a company called Adamantium and has kept the name of the owner secret for the time being. What stories will come out that cursed place in the future only time can tell. This is the end of our Skinwalker story. Thank you for listening, and as always, like, subscribe, and comment. Take care and have a good one. Good night, friends.